My wife secretly married her boss, stole $200, $0 from our joint account to fund their affair, and now she's claiming half my inheritance in a bitter property fight. I never saw this coming. I never thought I'd be the kind of guy to get like this, but here I am, staring at my wife, Lisa, lying through her teeth about everything. The craziest part, the moment I found out she married her boss behind my back. Yeah, married. As in legally tied the knot, probably with some fancy ceremony she never told me about. It sounds unreal, but the evidence is right in front of me and I can't ignore it anymore. Lisa and I had been together for about 7 years. We met in college, moved in together after graduation, and for the most part I thought we had a solid, normal marriage. She was supposed to be my partner, my best friend. But lately, I'd sensed something was off. She became secretive about her phone, always hiding it when I entered the room, deleting texts, and acting defensive if I even glanced at her screen. She started coming home late, claiming it was work, but her stories didn't add up. She'd say she was working late, then leave her phone face down all night, and her attitude shifted from loving to distant. One night, I decided to check her phone. I'm not proud of it, but I was suspicious. Something just didn't sit right. So I snuck into her purse when she was in the shower and grabbed her phone. I wasn't planning to do anything with it, just wanted to see if I could catch her in a lie. When I unlocked her messages, I saw texts from her boss, Mark, that made my stomach turn. They were flirty, full of innuendos, and clearly more than just work-related banter. But that wasn't the worst part. What really hit me was the email she received from Mark's assistant, a receipt for a hotel booking, with Lisa's name on it, scheduled for a weekend when she told me she was at her sister's house. The hotel was a 2-hour drive away, and the reservation was for 2 nights. I looked at the email, then at her phone, and realized she'd planned this entire thing behind my back. She lied about visiting her sister, and I'd bought it. I felt like I'd been sucker punched in the gut. That moment, I knew my world was crumbling. I felt numb, like I was watching a bad movie unfold in slow motion. I didn't know what to do at first. I just sat there staring at her phone, trying to process what I'd uncovered. My mind raced through everything. The nights she was late, her secretive behavior, the way she'd snap at me if I asked too many questions. It all clicked into place now. She wasn't just cheating, she was sneaking around, hiding a whole life from me. The next day I confronted her. I didn't yell or accuse at first, I wanted to hear her explain, but I already knew what she'd say. I told her I saw the messages, the hotel reservation, everything. Her face twisted into a sneer and she spat back, "You're overreacting. It's just sex and it doesn't mean anything. Mark's just a boss and I was just talking. You're being paranoid." That's when I saw her true colors, cold, bitchy, and completely indifferent to how much she was hurting me. She insisted she loved me, that it was a mistake, that Mark meant nothing. But I could see the lies in her eyes. She was trying to spin it, to make me doubt myself, to turn the tables. She told me I was insecure, that I was jealous, that I was ruining everything over a few messages. I felt a mix of anger, betrayal, and heartbreak. How could she sit there and lie so easily, as if she hadn't just shattered our marriage? After she left the room, I sat alone, staring at the phone she'd tossed on the table. My mind kept circling back to the money. I remembered that joint account we had, our savings meant for our future. I'd recently noticed some strange withdrawals, but I brushed it off as online shopping or bills. Now I realized she'd stolen $200, $0 from that account, half of our savings, to fund her affair with Mark. The thought made me sick. How could she do this? How could she betray me like that? The emotional hit me hard. I was furious, then devastated, then numb. I'd always trusted her, and now I felt like a fool. The woman I loved, the woman I married, was out there lying, cheating, stealing from us, and planning a life with her boss. I kept asking myself how I missed all the signs, how I didn't see the warning flags. I'd been so blinded by love that I overlooked the red flags right in front of me. I felt betrayed, not just by her, but by the whole idea of what I thought our life was supposed to be. I knew I couldn't stay silent. I had to decide what to do next. The truth was out, and now I had to face the consequences. I felt like I was standing at a crossroads. One path led to trying to salvage a broken marriage and the other to walking away and seeking revenge. Honestly, I was leaning toward the latter. I've never been the vengeful type, but this was different. She took everything from me, my trust, our savings, our future, and I wasn't going to let her get away with it, not without a fight. After that confrontation, everything changed. I couldn't sleep, couldn't focus. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw her face twisting in that smirk when she lied. It was like a punch to the gut every time I thought about how she'd betrayed me, how she'd secretly married her boss and stolen a huge chunk of our savings to fund her secret life. I started digging deeper, trying to piece everything together, and what I found only made my blood boil. I spent the next few days going through our bank accounts, credit card statements, anything I could get my hands on. That's when I discovered the full extent of her betrayal. The $200, $0 wasn't just spent on random stuff. It was funneled into her secret account, which she'd opened under a fake name. She transferred the money in small amounts over months, trying to hide it, but I caught it. The more I looked, the more I saw how carefully she'd planned everything. She'd even taken out a second mortgage on our house, claiming it was for renovations, but instead, she used that money to cover her expenses with Mark. The biggest shock was the wedding. She'd gone and gotten herself legally married to Mark. I found the marriage license hidden in her email drafts. She'd done it all behind my back, probably while pretending to be busy at work. She told me she was just having an affair, but I never imagined she'd actually marry him. That was the moment I realized I'd been played for a fool. My wife, the woman I loved, was now someone completely different, someone capable of lying, stealing, and betraying everything we built together. I felt sick, angry, and humiliated. I couldn't believe I'd missed the signs. All those late nights, the secretive phone calls, her changing attitude. She was planning this all along. I'd been so caught up in work and trying to keep everything afloat that I never saw the cracks forming. Now I saw her for what she really was, someone who'd lie to my face, cheat on me, and then steal my money like it was nothing. The betrayal hit me hard, but what hurt even more was realizing I'd been so blind. I knew I had to confront her again, but this time with a plan. I couldn't just yell and accuse her. I needed evidence, proof, undeniable proof of everything she'd done. I started gathering everything, screenshots of the emails, bank statements, the marriage license, even recordings of her lying to me when I caught her in small lies earlier. I wanted to make sure I had everything in order before I made my next move. Meanwhile, I also hired a lawyer. I knew I had to protect what was left of my assets and prepare for the inevitable legal mess. That's when I learned she was planning to claim a significant portion of my inheritance. She'd been talking about it openly, claiming she deserved half because we'd been married so long and I was wealthy enough to share. The idea that she'd try to take half of what I was supposed to inherit after everything she'd done made my blood boil even more. I realized she wasn't just after my money, she wanted to destroy me completely. Every day felt like walking through a minefield. I couldn't trust her, couldn't sleep, and I kept replaying everything in my mind. How did it come to this? How did I end up married to someone who'd lie, cheat, steal from us, and then marry her boss? It was like a nightmare I couldn't wake up from. I felt betrayed, furious, and lost all at once. But I knew one thing: I wasn't going down without a fight. I was going to fight for what was mine, for what we had, and for my dignity. The plan was starting to form in my head, and I knew I had to act fast before she managed to spin her lies even further. I also started thinking about what I'd do if she tried to take my inheritance. I'd always been cautious with money, but now I saw how fragile everything was. She lied about everything, about her job, her loyalty, her love, and I had to be prepared for her next move. I wasn't going to let her walk away with everything she wanted, not after what she'd done. Not after she'd married Mark, stolen from us, and tried to claim my future. That's when I realized I had to take control, even if it meant ending things for good or worse, exposing her in front of everyone. And so, I started planning my next steps. I knew I'd confront her again, but this time with everything laid out. I'd show her I wasn't going to be a pushover, that I was serious about fighting back. I wasn't just angry, I was determined to make her pay, to make her see that her actions had consequences. I'd get my money back, I'd protect my inheritance, and I'd make sure she couldn't destroy me or our life anymore. I was done being the victim. It was time to take control. The more I dug into her financials, the clearer it became how deep her deception ran. She'd been meticulous, every move calculated, every dollar transferred in small, almost unnoticeable amounts. It was like she was trying to hide her tracks, but she underestimated how much I was willing to look. I found the account she'd opened under that fake name, the multiple transfers, the payments to that hotel she booked for her weekend with Mark. It all fit together like a puzzle: her marriage, her theft, her lies. What made my blood boil was how she'd spun her stories. She kept insisting it was just sex, that Mark was just a boss, that she loved me and it was all a mistake. Yeah, right. I'd seen the emails, the wedding license, the bank transfers. She'd married him in a small courthouse, probably thinking she could keep it all under wraps. She told me she was just confused, that she didn't mean to hurt me, that she was stressed at work. But I knew better. She'd been planning this for months, maybe longer. All the while I was working my ass off trying to keep everything afloat while she was secretly building a new life with her boss. It hit me hard how much I'd trusted her. I thought she was my partner, my best friend. I never thought she'd betray me like this, especially not with someone she called her boss. I started to see her for what she really was: manipulative, selfish, and utterly ruthless. She lied to my face, stole from us, and married her boss behind my back. And for what? For a quick fling, a little excitement, or maybe just for money. I couldn't tell anymore, but it didn't matter. What mattered was I was furious and I needed to do something about it. I decided I had enough evidence to confront her again. I set up a meeting at our house, pretending I wanted to talk things through. I wanted her to see I wasn't going to be played anymore. I laid everything out: screenshots, bank statements, the marriage license, and her secret account details. I watched her face as she realized I knew everything. Her eyes widened, then narrowed into that bitchy sneer she always wore when she thought she was winning. She tried to deny everything at first, claiming I was crazy, jealous, or that I'd misunderstood. But I wasn't buying her lies anymore. "I know about the marriage, Lisa," I said coldly. "You married Mark, didn't you? You've been planning this for months. You stole $200, $0 from our joint account, and you think you can just walk away like nothing happened." Her face went pale for a second, then she burst into laughter. That bitchy, dismissive laugh that made me want to punch her. "You're overreacting," she said, brushing her hair back. "It's just sex and I did nothing wrong. Mark's just a boss and I was just talking. You're paranoid and you're crazy to think I'd do something like that." I felt a surge of rage. How could she sit there and lie so effortlessly? I had the proof right in front of her. "You think I'm stupid. You think I don't see what you're doing. You married him, took our money, and now you're trying to pretend none of it happened. You're a liar, Lisa, a cheat, and I'm done trusting you." She tried to play the victim, tears welling up in her eyes, but it was all a show. I could see right through her. That's when I realized I had to act fast. I couldn't just threaten her or yell. I needed to make her understand that I was serious. I told her I was going to take everything: our money, the house, her share of the inheritance, and I was going to make sure she paid for what she did. The moment I left that room, I felt a strange sense of clarity. I knew I wasn't just fighting for money anymore. I was fighting for my dignity, my future, my life. I had been betrayed in every way possible, but I wasn't going to let her win. I was going to expose her, take back what was mine, and rebuild from the ashes. I knew it wouldn't be easy, and I'd probably lose some things along the way, but I was done being the victim. From now on, I was taking control. That night, I stayed up late, drafting my plan. I contacted a lawyer specializing in fraud and divorce. I wanted to get a clear picture of my legal options. I also started gathering all her lies: her messages, her financial records. I was determined to make her regret everything she'd done. I knew she'd try to spin her story, probably claim I was abusive or unstable, but I had everything: proof, receipts, the marriage license. I was ready for whatever she threw at me. Deep down, I was already preparing for the worst. I knew she'd fight like hell to keep her new life with Mark, to claim her share of the inheritance, and to destroy me if she could. but I wasn't going down without a fight. I'd protect what was ours, and I'd make damn sure she paid for her lies. Because if there's one thing I learned, it's that betrayal like this doesn't just hurt, it changes you forever. And I wasn't going to let her do that to me. The days that followed were a blur of legal consultations, financial audits, and sleepless nights. I was consumed with figuring out how to salvage what little I could, and more importantly, how to stop her from taking everything I had left. I knew she'd fight tooth and nail, probably claim she was entitled to half my inheritance, and do whatever it took to come out. On top, I also suspected she'd try to spin the story, paint herself as the victim, and manipulate everyone around her. That's why I was meticulous. Every email, every bank statement, every piece of evidence had to be in order. I hired a private investigator to verify her story and track her movements. I needed undeniable proof of her lies and her marriage to Mark. Turns out, she'd gone as far as changing her name legally to his, filing paperwork under a fake alias. I felt sick just thinking about how far she'd gone to cover her tracks. The investigator caught her meeting Mark at a hotel a few days after our confrontation, and I had the photos to prove it. Seeing her with her arm around him, smiling like she was on top of the world, made my stomach turn. She'd completely abandoned any pretense of being the woman I thought I knew. Meanwhile, I kept digging into the financial web she'd spun. That $200, $0 wasn't just gone. It was gone in ways I hadn't even imagined. She used some of it to invest in a small business under her new name, trying to launder the money. She'd also transferred large sums to offshore accounts, trying to hide her assets. I realized she'd planned this whole thing for months, maybe even longer. She'd married Mark, stolen from us, and set herself up to walk away with as much as she could get. I was furious but also numb. The betrayal ran so deep it was almost surreal. I kept asking myself how I hadn't seen it coming, how I'd been so blind to her manipulations. I'd always thought we had a good life, working hard, saving, dreaming about the future. And now it felt like all of that was just a lie she'd told to hide her real plans. The woman I'd loved, the woman I married, was gone, replaced by someone cold, calculating, and utterly ruthless. I knew I had to act fast before she managed to spin her story and turn people against me. I sat down with my lawyer and laid out everything I had, proof of her marriage, her financial crimes, her lies. We drafted a detailed legal plan to freeze her assets, prevent her from claiming a share of my inheritance, and file for divorce. I also made sure to secure the house, the savings, and my personal assets. I wasn't about to lose everything because of her greed and deception. One thing I wasn't prepared for was her claiming she was entitled to half my inheritance. She kept insisting that because we'd been married so long, I owed her a share. That's when I realized she was calculating her next move, trying to leverage her marriage and her theft to get her hands on my future wealth. I knew I had to fight that aggressively. I wasn't going to let her take what was rightfully mine after everything she'd done. During this time, I also started to reflect on what I'd learned. Trust, I realized, is fragile. It can be shattered in an instant if you're not careful. I'd given her my love, my loyalty, my life savings, only to find out she'd been secretly planning her escape, her marriage, her theft all along. It was painful, but it also made me stronger. I'd been naive, but no more. From now on, I'd be cautious, guarded, and prepared for anything. The most unsettling part was how she continued to lie and manipulate everyone around her. She told her friends she was stressed and unhappy, trying to paint herself as the victim. She everything to her family, claiming I was crazy and jealous. I knew her game. She was trying to spin a story that would make her look innocent and me look like the villain, but I had the proof. I had her emails, her wedding license, her bank transfers, and the photos of her with Mark. I was ready to expose her in court if necessary. I felt a strange mixture of anger and sadness. Angry because she'd betrayed everything we stood for. Sad because I'd lost my wife, the woman I thought I knew. But I also felt a sense of clarity. This wasn't just about money or infidelity. It was about boundaries, trust, and respect. I realized I'd been too trusting, too willing to overlook the signs. But I wasn't going to make that mistake again. I'd rebuild my life step by step and make sure she paid for her deception. At the same time, I started to think about what I wanted moving forward. The house, the inheritance, the life we'd planned, everything was now uncertain. But I knew one thing: I was done being the victim. I was going to take control of this situation, fight for what's mine, and make sure she never did this to anyone again. Trust was broken, yes, but I still had my integrity, my dignity, and my resolve. And that was enough to start over, stronger, wiser, and more cautious than ever before. The legal battle started to heat up faster than I expected. My lawyer was relentless, filing all the necessary motions to freeze her assets, prevent her from claiming any part of my inheritance, and start divorce proceedings. I knew she'd fight me tooth and nail. She always had a way of twisting things, spinning stories, manipulating people. That's why I made sure every piece of evidence was airtight: screenshots, bank statements, the marriage license, recordings of her lies. I wanted her to have no way out. She responded by doubling down on her lies. She claimed she was innocent, that I was crazy, and that she was just confused and stressed. She told her friends I was abusive, that I was controlling, trying to paint herself as the victim. It was all part of her game to turn everyone against me. But I had the proof: her emails, her secret accounts, the marriage documents. I handed everything over to my lawyer, knowing this would be her downfall. Meanwhile, I kept a close eye on her movements. I hired a private investigator to follow her, and sure enough, she was still meeting Mark. I saw photos of her sneaking out of hotels with him, holding hands, smiling like she was the happiest woman alive. It was like watching a nightmare unfold. I felt the anger surge again. How could she betray me so blatantly? How could she throw away everything we had built? One day, I received a call that shocked me to my core. The investigator had tracked her to a bank, transferring large sums of money to offshore accounts. It was clear she was trying to hide her assets, trying to shield the money she'd stolen. I felt sick. That $200, $0 wasn't just gone. It was trying to be hidden, laundered, erased. I knew I had to act fast if I wanted to recover anything, and if I wanted to stop her from walking away with all my inheritance. The more I learned, the angrier I became. She'd married Mark in a secret ceremony, probably hoping to secure her future with him and shield her assets. She planned this for months, maybe longer. I kept asking myself how I missed the signs, how I'd been so blind. I'd trusted her, loved her, and she'd used that trust against me. It was a bitter pill to swallow, but I couldn't ignore the truth anymore. She was a manipulative, calculating woman who'd do anything to get what she wanted. That realization spurred me to action. I gathered all the evidence I had: proof of her marriage, her financial crimes, her lies, and presented it to my lawyer. We filed for full divorce, demanded the return of stolen funds, and sought a court order to seize her offshore accounts. I knew she'd fight me on everything, but I was determined to see this through. I wasn't going to let her walk away with my money, my future, or my dignity. In the meantime, I also started planning how to protect myself from her next move. I contacted a financial advisor to help me safeguard what I had left. I changed passwords, secured my accounts, and cut off her access to our joint assets. I even began thinking about moving out of the house if she was going to fight me. This hard, I didn't want her to control what remained of my life. I needed to take back control piece by piece. Throughout this whole ordeal, I kept reflecting on what I'd learned. Trust is fragile, I realized. It can be shattered in an instant if you're not careful. I'd been naive, believing in her love, her loyalty, but her actions proved otherwise. She lied, cheated, stole, and married her boss, all while pretending to be the loving wife. I felt a mixture of heartbreak and anger. But I also knew I had to stay strong, keep fighting, and not let her destroy me. Every day was a new challenge, but I was determined. I knew she'd do everything in her power to keep her secrets hidden, to manipulate the system, and to come out on top. But I had the evidence, the law on my side, and the resolve to see this through. I wasn't just fighting for money anymore. I was fighting for my life, my dignity, and my future. And I promised myself I wouldn't stop until I got justice. The court date finally arrived, and I was a nervous wreck but also oddly relieved. All the months of digging, fighting, gathering evidence, it was finally coming to a head. I sat across from Lisa in the courtroom, her face cold and dismissive, trying to maintain her composure. She hired her own lawyers, of course, and was doing everything she could to spin her lies. But I had the truth on my side, and I was ready to fight for what was rightfully mine. When the judge called the case, I laid out everything: her marriage to Mark, the stolen money, the offshore accounts, the lies. I presented the evidence: the emails, the bank statements, the marriage license, the photos from her meetings with Mark. It was like a dam breaking. Her lawyer tried to argue that I was overreacting, that I was jealous, but the judge wasn't having it. The evidence was irrefutable. As the proceedings went on, I saw her face fall. She had no way to spin her way out of this one. The judge ordered her to return the stolen $200, $0, seize her offshore accounts, and awarded me full custody of the house and assets. The final blow was the court denying her any claim to my inheritance. Her lies and theft disqualified her from any claim. I could see her frustration and anger, but I felt nothing but a strange sense of closure. In the aftermath, I felt a mix of relief and exhaustion. I'd lost my wife, yes, but I'd gained my life back. The financial damage was severe, but I was determined to rebuild. I started working with a financial advisor to recover what I could, and I moved out of the house, no longer wanting to live in the place where my trust had been shattered. I knew it would take time, but I was ready to start over. Lisa, on the other hand, was left to pick up the pieces of her ruined life. She tried to fight the court's decision, but her lies had been exposed and her manipulations unraveled. She was left with nothing: no money, no marriage, and no way to spin her way out of the mess she'd made. I heard she moved away, probably trying to escape the shame and the legal consequences. Looking back, I realize how much I've learned from this nightmare. Trust is fragile, and I was naive to believe it was unbreakable. I learned that some people will lie, cheat, and steal without remorse, and you have to be vigilant. I learned that justice might take time, but it's worth fighting for. And most importantly, I learned that even after betrayal on such a scale, you can find a way to pick yourself up, rebuild, and move forward. I don't regret standing up for myself. I don't regret fighting for what was rightfully mine. And I don't regret exposing her, even if it meant losing the woman I loved. Because in the end, I realized that my dignity and integrity mattered more than any relationship built on lies. So, if anyone out there finds themselves betrayed, remember this: the truth might be painful, but it's the only way to truly heal. Protect yourself, gather your evidence, and fight for what's right. You deserve that much more than you realize. And no matter how dark things seem, there's always a way out. Trust your instincts, stand your ground, and never let someone steal your future.